Hi all, and welcome to our second of 4 Regional ACE webinars. I'm Ryan Pratt, VP of Marketing and Research at GradLeaders. For those of you who aren't aware, GradLeaders is the relatively new brand that's a result of the merger between two companies, MBA Focus and CSO Research, that have been in the industry for 30+ years. Today we partner with thousands of career centers and employers who use our technology to manage the entire career development and campus recruiting process. We're excited to be partnering with all 4 regional ACEs again this year on these webinars. A quick reminder before we kick this off, everyone has been automatically muted on entry, but if you have questions at any time throughout the webinar, please feel free to type them into the chat window within WebEx, not the Q&A window, but the chat window. And please be sure to send your questions to all panelists so that Emily, Sarah, and I can all see them.
Very excited to be here. Thank you so much for the intros. Whenever I do a virtual event, which I do these for FindSpark as well, I would love if everybody could quickly share their name, their title, where they work, and maybe even their LinkedIn in the chat. You can chat to all panelists and all attendees. I think this is a great networking opportunity. You're all here to learn something, and I think being able to connect with others who are also interested in learning about social media and how they can apply it to their role would be really beneficial. So I think introduce yourself. If you're open to it, I think it'd be great for you all to get to know each other in addition to sharing what I have to share with you today. So I actually presented this a similar talk. I've updated it a bit since things change very rapidly with social media, but I was very excited to present this presentation at the Eastern ACE Conference back in the summer. So without further ado, I would say, you're here. So I always recommend if everyone can flip their phones over, X out of other screens, and just fully invest in being here. I know it's very easy to get distracted, but you're already signed up, so might as well fully be here. And I will be sharing these slides with Ryan to share with you afterwards. And of course, thank you to GradLeaders and Ryan and all the regional ACE organizations for hosting me here today. So I want to quickly go through my background. So as mentioned, FindSpark is a national online-offline career community focused on students and young professionals and connecting employers to them. And this is a little bit of what our events look like. We aim to make networking fun. We know that networking and career development can sometimes be presented in not the best way and not the most exciting way. And so we aim to present these tools and topics to our members who represent over 500 schools in a way that is very relatable to them. And my background is in events and social media. So I launched my career and actually got my very first job through my school's career center. So shout out to Hofstra University. I was a big career center geek. That is a lot of what inspired me to start FindSpark, to create a community that helps take the negativity out of networking and help people create a really strong network for themselves early on in their career. So in addition to FindSpark, I am also an adjunct professor at School of Visual Arts and Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, teaching social media and career courses. So what does FindSpark actually do? So we create articles, we have a job board, virtual events, in-person events, and we focus on creative business and tech industries. And so again, creating resources that really resonate with young people. For instance, we like to use a lot of animated GIFs. And so I'm excited to talk about Instagram stories and Snapchat because we know that our members are there and that's how they're consuming content. And we have a lot of great partners similar to how career centers have employer partners. And so we want to do whatever we can to connect our employer partners to our members in interesting ways as well. And we do also work with higher ed to enable them to connect with our resources and the recruiters we work with, and of course to connect them with our members. And these are just a few of the schools that are within our FindSpark Educator community. And so what we're going to cover today is Instagram story basics, Snapchat basics. We're going to talk about the difference between the two. We're going to go over some story concepts for either and talk about Snapchat GeoFilters. And now what's interesting is when I actually pitched this topic to the Eastern ACE conference, it was only about Snapchat, but of course you pitch those sessions very far in advance. So once it got towards the event date, I decided, you know what, Instagram stories are really taking over and are becoming big as well. And so I expanded this presentation to be about both Instagram stories and Snapchat. So we're going to cover a little bit of both because they are very similar tools. And I definitely understand that a lot of you who are here might not have the resources or bandwidth to use both. And so we'll talk about ways you can potentially use both, or also at least help to decide which will be a better strategy for you. But what I promise today is that you will leave with some very clear ideas and action items that you can take back to your team to use these tools to better engage your students so that they know about your resources, they're using your resources, and if you're an employer, they know that you are an employer of choice. And why, again, Snapchat and Instagram stories? Well, we all have the same goals, right? Everybody here, we want to educate and connect with our students, with our young professionals to help them excel in their careers. And I've been an adjunct professor in addition to running FindSpark since 2014. And every semester I ask my students, what platforms are you on the most? What do you like the most and why? And what do you like the least? And why? And overall, since 2014, the answer is always Instagram and Snapchat are the #1 platforms they are on. They like them because they're quick and they're simple. And Facebook is the platform they like the least because there's a lot of crap on Facebook, which we're all aware of. And now we are going to focus on Instagram and Snapchat. And even though anecdotally, at least, my students always say, and I'm sure you hear this as well, that they don't like Facebook. That doesn't mean they're not on Facebook. So even though we're not really going to talk about Facebook today, I would say don't totally give up on Facebook because even though people don't like it, that's where most people are. And then Twitter, anecdotally, is always the platform people, my students say that they like the least because they just don't get it, and that's a platform where they're not really on. So my advice, if your career center is looking for a platform to focus on, is I would recommend Instagram because it's used the most by both younger people, but then older people as well. All right, so a little bit about Snapchat basics. So it's still not as crowded as other social media platforms in terms of every brand being on it. One great thing about Snapchat is only you see the number of views you have and who's following you. So you don't have to worry about any vanity metrics like views or friend counts. And the other great thing is Snapchat is supposed to be fun and silly and not overproduced, which makes things easier for people who don't have as many resources. And, you know, again, we all know Snapchat is being used by tons of people. It's only going to be growing with its recent IPO. And some of these big stats are actually even from a little while ago, so I'm sure these numbers have grown. And we have surveyed our FindSpark community members, and they check Snapchat many times a day, and really what they're looking for is humor. They're looking for lighthearted content. So Snapchat is definitely a place to show sort of the fun side of things and what you have to offer. And so for Instagram stories, yes, Instagram has cannibalized a lot of the traffic of people who used to just use Snapchat. They're now also or exclusively using Instagram stories. And because Instagram was used by so many more people in the first place, there's definitely a wider adoption. It is also in the moment, more raw, more fun, but because it's still attached to Instagram, which is sort of like a highlight reel, it is a bit more lifestyle-y in terms of what I mean by that is maybe a little bit more curated, slightly less silly than a platform like Snapchat. And a big difference with Instagram versus Snapchat is that there is more discoverability potential, and I'll get more into that in a second. And so I like showing this little chart of how quickly Instagram Stories has copycatted a lot of the Snapchat features. So you can see here in these bullet points that the speed at which they've copied Snapchat features has increased over time, and Instagram Stories is doing even, I would say, more innovation in terms of the features in addition to just copying Snapchat. So for instance, one of the newer features I saw on Instagram Stories is that you can actually go live with multiple people. So one account can go live, and then other accounts can request to be live at the same time. So you can basically have like multiple people doing a live Instagram video at the same time, which could be really interesting in terms of ways to connect with partners. So Instagram Stories is copycatting a lot of these features, so you might want to focus your time on Instagram because of that. And on either platform, there's a lot of similarities. So you can share photos and videos with or without sound. The videos can be up to 15 seconds long per clip, but then of course you can add them together to make a story as long as you'd like. And the story lasts for 24 hours. You can also download it after the fact. On either platform, you can upload old content in videos, including, in addition to creating content, just directly within the platform. And again, there are a lot of fun things that you can do with these platforms in terms of drawing, in terms of adding tags and face filters and stickers and all that fun stuff. And so this chart, this is a good one to screenshot if you want to take a picture or take a screenshot, but I will be sharing the slides after as well. So this is a little bit of some of the differences between Snapchat and Instagram Stories. So the seconds in terms of how long the videos can be is a little bit different. You can upload files, but with Instagram Stories, they only let you upload files that are only 24 hours old. Snapchat currently shows stories chronologically, but the algorithm is about to be updated so that it's going to be based, on an algorithm and not just chronologically. Stories on Instagram are showed based on an algorithm. Snapchat, there's less distractions on it, so you're going to get more attention from the people who are watching your story versus on Instagram, because there's more discoverability, there's just more distractions within the platforms in terms of options to click out. So what I mean by that is on Snapchat, you cannot tag other accounts or people. You cannot @mention other accounts or people. So to get people to follow you on Snapchat, you really have to work hard at it. You have to push it on other channels, send the link or Snapchat code via email. It's just harder to get found versus Instagram Stories. You can tag accounts. So you'll see in the different story examples I have, I'll share ways you can tag partners like employer partners or guest speakers, but there's more of that @mentioning that you see on other platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn. So it makes discoverability a little bit better. You can also include hashtags so people can click and see a fuller hashtag. In terms of stats, I've included some stats here. There's definitely more robust analytics on Instagram Stories because Instagram is owned by Facebook. For Snapchat, anyone can purchase GeoFilters, but right now for Instagram Stories, you cannot purchase any sort of GeoFilter. There is no live streaming option on Snapchat. There is on Instagram, which can then be saved and added to your story. And then this bottom part is actually something new I updated from this summer. So Snapchat now, anybody who has a Snapchat account, at the end of your story or on any snap, you can attach a link. Now this is really great because of course there's a big reason you want to be snapping is to direct people to sign up for something or to read something or to view something. So anyone now can have an account where you can attach a link and say, swipe up for the full article or swipe up to RSVP, etc. On Instagram Stories, only select accounts with a certain number of followers or being verified have the ability to include links, which is a bummer, right? Because again, right now on Instagram, the only way sort of quote unquote normal accounts can link out is having a link in the bio, but not in the Snapchat story. So I think the fact that Snapchat made everybody be able to add links was sort of a dig at Instagram Stories, making it selective because it's huge to be able to link out after your stories. And of course, I would recommend following FindSpark. We are on both Snapchat and Instagram, and so to get some inspiration and to see some of the things I mentioned in action would be really great. So we're just at FindSpark on both channels. And you can see we've gone ahead and downloaded our snap code and put our logo in the ghost. And we actually have stickers. We use this graphic on other social media channels because people can scan this code in the app and easily follow us. So if you really want to make a big push for people to follow a Snapchat account, I definitely recommend customizing a little your QR code, which you can get from your Snapchat account, and potentially making stickers or putting it up on flyers. All right, so the next part of the presentation, I'm going to talk about content ideas. So what can you actually post to Instagram or Snapchat to get your students to engage with your content, to learn things, to come to your programs, or to engage with your programs, or if you're a recruiter, to get them to have a better sense of the careers and opportunities that you have to offer. All of these story ideas can work for both Instagram or Snapchat. And one other thing that I would definitely highlight is that if you do not have an Instagram or Snapchat account specifically for your department, for instance, your Career Center department, or maybe your company has an account on these platforms, but it's not career focused for those employers and recruiters in the office, that's okay, because you can use these ideas to do a takeover of your main company account or your main school account. All right, so the first content idea is to do an employer or an alumni takeover. So every school has amazing employers you work with, amazing alumni, and of course, if you're an employer, you have your actual team members. And so having them take over your account is a great way to get some fresh content and to give people a reason to follow you that day. Right? And so if you're going to do a takeover, we always recommend, and how FindSpark does it, is we actually create a Facebook event and we promote the takeover like an event. So we say, hey, on this day, 360i is going to be taking over our Snapchat account. Follow our Snap code, follow us for a chance to see behind the scenes. And they have to follow them that day because otherwise the story goes away. And this is a way to get some unfiltered insight into these companies, what the office looks like, who works there. So 360i is one of our employer partners, and this little screenshot below is that somebody saw 360i take over our Snapchat account, and then that is what motivated them to come to one of our events where 360i was speaking. And in these slides, you'll see after the fact that I actually have the videos embedded. So of course, I'm not going to play them because that would take too long during this presentation, but there are videos embedded that you'll be able to see to get an idea of what all of these stories actually look like. All right, another great content idea is having speakers who are coming to your campus do a takeover themselves. So I was a guest speaker at Princeton for their social media day, and so the week of the event, I took over the account, and I basically gave a little sneak peek in terms of what I would be talking about the day of. And so these are some screenshots. Yes, I'm not afraid to use face filters and be a little silly, and I give really actionable tips. And in addition to verbally talking about the tips, it's really important to actually type out the tips that you're saying as well, because a lot of people listen to Snapchat or Instagram stories with the sound off. So you never want to just have a video of somebody talking and not have any sort of caption. Always assume that people won't be listening. And another huge tip is to do what I did in the second snap, which is to say, get ready to screenshot the next snap, because one of the main ways to engage on both platforms is you can see on Snapchat how many people have screenshotted the snap. And so what we do a lot is we'll actually just take a screenshot of an article we've already written or something we've already produced, put some emojis or stickers on it, and we'll tell people, as you can see, okay, the next snap, you're going to want to screenshot this one so you can save it. And then you can see here, this is a list of conversation starters and questions to ask. And we actually got a note from the Princeton social media team that it got over 1,800 views, and it was the most, this was the most screen grabbed snap, which got over 152 people screenshotted this. And that's a great way to show that, hey, this is useful to people. And again, all I did was take a blog post that we already had and uploaded that picture of a chunk of that. All right, and of course, a lot of you are doing your own events, and you know, we gotta face it, right? Students now are busy, and everybody is really busy, and so you want to give everybody an opportunity to benefit from the experiences that you're producing, even if they can't be there in person. I'm a big believer in sharing your content that you're doing in person on all platforms in a way that's helpful. I think some people think that, oh, well, if we share it on these other platforms, will that discourage people from coming? I don't think so. I think you want your content to spread as far and wide as possible. And of course, it's great for people who are presenters or speakers at your events to know that, hey, you know, you might only have an audience of this many in person, but we're going to be taking this and sharing it across other channels as well, so even more people can get value from it. So whenever you're doing a workshop, sharing some of that content on your Instagram stories or your Snapchat is great for those followers who can't be there in person. And I always recommend having a balance between creating a little bit of FOMO, which is the phrase fear of missing out, right? So you do want to make people who didn't take the time to come to your event a little jealous, right? You want them to be bummed out that they weren't there in person so that they come next time. So for instance, at FindSpark, you know, we always say, hey, like, we're going to give some of the key tips on these channels, but only the people in person get to sit with these speakers and ask them, you know, questions one-on-one, right? But we also like to make sure we're actually sharing actionable tips through our different channels and not just saying, oh, hey, wish you were here, but you're not, so too bad, right? We want to give them some value through what we share also. And then, of course, everyone in the audience here has so much value to add, so many insights in terms of how they can help their members or their students or potential candidates. And so sharing your own expertise is a great way to use Snapchat as well. This was actually a Snap story that I did when I was at the CSTM meetup, the Career Services Technology meetup. I was waiting for my sushi to come in the lobby of the hotel, and as I was there, I thought, you know, let me share some networking tips that I'm actually using at the event. And I actually also got a question from somebody, they snapped it to me, right? And so if you have a Snapchat or an Instagram story, the great thing is you're creating another way for your students to get in touch with you and ask questions. And you can take those questions and share answers publicly with everybody so that you benefit not just that one student, but everybody. So it's a great way to you know, share more value than just in a one-on-one setting. And so you can see here I do have, you know, my own face, but another great thing that you can do is to create snaps that don't show anybody's face, that's just using text and stickers, and you don't have to worry if you're camera shy. And so this is a great thing to do because you all already have so much content in terms of handouts, resources, and again, just your own insights. So doing a Snap story or an Instagram story where you are just repurposing that content and doing a little bit of copy and pasting, just putting text over a blank image, again, adding some fun stickers, and then you can always direct people to your website or a blog post or an event page to learn more. And of course, a day in the life. So this is really great for employers to show off what is it like to work, you know, at your company, and even for career centers to help explain to their students what they do, what they have to offer. So doing just a simple day in the life type of takeover where you let people follow along with the different things that you have going on a day where you have some cool things going on. And you can see here, this is actually a Instagram story of when FindSpark was in Chicago. So as I mentioned, we are a national career community. So we have one of our major events, Hustle Summit, in multiple cities, including Chicago. And you can see in some of these screenshots what I mean by being able on Instagram stories to discover other accounts and mention other accounts. So starting here over with the left, you can see I wrote coffee break with Lauren from @ActiveCampaign, a new #FindSpark employer you'll meet at #HustleSummitChicago. So on Instagram stories, you can @mention accounts, and when somebody's viewing that story, they can click the account and easily go to ActiveCampaign and see their profile. You can also add locations. You can see I was at a coffee shop. I added that location. You can also add hashtags into the text. So in this next one, I added #the paint emoji and then #in the loop, which was an event that I was at, so I could potentially get discovered, the FindSpark account discovered from other people using that hashtag. Again, in the next snap, I mentioned our Hustle Summit account because we do have a dedicated Instagram account for Hustle Summit, and I also mentioned the venue we were going to be at. And then in the final slide, I included the location Chicago, which that again is a clickable link. So if somebody sees that, they can click on Chicago and see all the other stories that people are putting under that location. So all of this @mentioning and adding of locations that can be clicked and hashtags that can be clicked, that is not possible on Snapchat. There's no sort of linking out or tagging, which makes Instagram stories more appealing because you can tag and mention employer accounts, partner accounts, and also benefit from including hashtags to potentially get discovered by people who are searching those hashtags. Another great way to utilize Snapchat and Instagram stories is to let students engage with you on those platforms. So just curious, how many of you do contests or sweepstakes where you ask students or an alumni to use a hashtag on Twitter or Instagram? Maybe you can just share in the chat if anybody has had that experience of, again, running a sweepstakes where they have to use, post something with a hashtag, maybe live at an event or leading up to like a career fair. Has anyone done anything like that? Just curious. You can share in the chat. Just make sure it goes to all attendees. Anyone out there do a sweepstakes? So, I think that is the most common way to run a sweepstakes is to ask people to use a hashtag or use and post it on either Twitter or Instagram. But the issue with that is that a lot of people don't want to be forced to put a certain type of content on their feeds, especially a very curated personal feed like their Instagram, and a lot of students don't have Twitter, as mentioned. So at FindSpark, whenever we have a virtual event or we have an in-person event, we do always have a social media sweepstakes where they can win a prize, but we give them the option to not only post on Twitter or Instagram, but we also let them enter by DMing us, direct messaging us on Instagram, or Snapchatting us, like DMing us on Snapchat. And you can see here, these are actually screenshots of some people who snapped us or Instagram DM'd us during virtual workshops or in-person events. So whenever, again, we do an event, we say, if you use our hashtag on Instagram or Twitter or Snap DM us or Instagram DM us, that they'll be entered to win a prize. And so giving them that ability to privately message us as a way to enter has really upped our engagement level, because there's, again, so many people who don't want to post publicly on their accounts, but they're very willing to share with us privately. And I think just getting these screenshots of what their biggest takeaways are is really powerful, and it's just really fun. A lot of people use their Bitmojis in their Snapchats. So again, using these platforms is a way to get more engagement, to offer other ways for people to engage with you on social. And if you don't want to actually have a Snapchat account, which is totally fine, again, I know that a lot of career centers or employers might not have enough resources or people or time to do that. What I do recommend is that you take advantage of Snapchat GeoFilters. GeoFilters only exist on Snapchat in terms of anyone being able to buy them, not on Instagram stories. So how can Snapchat filters be used? You can create filters to promote events in advance and then to create buzz during events. You do not need to be a account on Snapchat that regularly snaps to buy one. You do need to create an account, but it doesn't matter if you're active or not, and they are pretty inexpensive. So they're called GeoFilters because the way they work is that you can buy a GeoFilter and say, okay, I want this filter to be available to students in the Student Center building on this day from 9 to 5. And then anyone who opens their Snapchat in that actual geographic location during that time will see your filter and will be able to use that. And I'll show you what that looks like. So here are actually a few Career Center GeoFilters. So the Eastern ACE that I'm a part of, I hosted a Twitter chat about social media and using it to engage students. And so these were a few career centers who shared the filters they've made. I think they're really fun. This one over here on the left, Salem State's pretty simple. NJIT, they actually let people sort of, it's almost like a face-in hole, which is super cute. And then I really love this Hofstra one. Of course, I'm a little biased because I went to Hofstra, but they have it as a little mock message. So these are just a few examples of designs, and these were all available to students to use during their career fairs. And so it's a great way for them to share with their friends that they're there and spreads the word, creates a little FOMO, and you do get stats on how many people actually use your filter after that time and day is done. So with FindSpark in 2016, we did a big case study, a big marketing campaign where we created a handful of different graduation-themed filters to use at some of the campuses where we have the biggest FindSpark presence, including campuses in New York like Hunter and Rutgers. And so these are what the filters look like. So they all had the graduation caps at the top, and then underneath they were all customized to include the name of the school. They had our logo. It says, adulting, here we come. And over here on the right is a screenshot of what it looks like when you're picking that area to have the hashtag or have the GeoFilter available in. So for instance, if you are at a big school where you have graduation or a career fair type event at a large venue like a stadium, it is actually more expensive. I think Snapchat knows, like, oh, this is a stadium, so we're going to jack up the price. So as you can see, for Rutgers, we were only able to buy the GeoFilter around like the smaller insular area of the stadium. You can see here one of my proud moments. That's Obama doing the graduation speech at Rutgers. So that's as close as probably Obama will get to FindSpark. But so we did these at a bunch of different schools, and I just want to show you what it looks like.
Freshman, and we have like a 30 GPA. Hi. This is a video.
So there you can see the filters can go over photos, and they can also go onto video. And now something that we learned and that I would recommend when you're thinking about the design of your filter, and Snapchat provides guidelines in terms of Photoshop templates. They also make it easy to actually, they have their own filter maker with some simple design tools. But one thing that I recommend is only putting your graphics on either the top or the bottom. And that's because a lot of people will then take their snaps and share them to other platforms like Instagram, and you don't want anything to get cut off. So you can see here in our design, we have stuff at the top and the bottom, but moving forward now, we only put it either or, and it also just makes it easier for people to sort of center themselves within the filter so that their face is not covered up. So these are just a few of our numbers. So our filters total got viewed over 500,000 times. They got used over 8,500 times. 10 cents a use basically is what it came out to about. We did it on 13 campuses. And so we were really happy with the success of this campaign in terms of gaining brand awareness. And these numbers are obviously very large, but you are definitely able to use filters in a way that works for you in terms of not being too expensive, and again, using them to advertise before an event and also on site during an event. And when you're thinking about GeoFilters, you want to put yourself in the user's seat, right? And so in terms of how to make it usable, these are actually two examples of sponsored Snapchat filters just by two random brands that I came across one day. And you can see on the left, it says, "I am hot and sweaty." And very small at the bottom, it says TLC. So this is sponsored by TLC. And this filter was available on a very hot day in New York during the summer. And so it's really funny. It's very relatable. Everybody in that area probably was feeling like they were hot and sweaty. And so I really love this concept and this idea. On the right, we have T-Mobile, right? That's the T-Mobile logo. But in terms of why I would use this, I was not impressed with this filter concept. Who knows how many people like baseball. This was in a random area in Chelsea. It wasn't like I was at a baseball stadium or anything. So it just seemed very niche, and I was like, why would a random person use this? So just think about being relevant when you're buying a GeoFilter. Like, how would people who might come across that filter in that time, on that day, in that location, how are they feeling, and how can you make it fun and relevant to them so that they actually use it? And there are a lot of higher ed people on Snapchat that you can use as examples. So I mentioned Hofstra, I mentioned Princeton University. These are a few other schools that I know that are using Snapchat to engage their students, get them to come to programs, create the opportunity for employers to connect with students. Some of them are Career Center specific, some of them are for the full school. But of course, it's always great to follow accounts that are in your industry, outside of your industry, so you can get ideas and reminders for what can be done. And so before I move over to Q&A, I just wanted to share a few more resources. So if you want to learn more about FindSpark, you can sign up there. I also have a lot of this type of content on my website, and all of this Snapchat material is also on our MCG social website, and this is my email. And so I want to now move to Q&A, and I definitely want to emphasize, I know we were just talking about Instagram stories and Snapchat stories. I moved pretty quickly. I wanted to get through a lot, but I want to open it up to any sort of Q&A, and I also want to open up the Q&A to any other social media questions that you have. I am a social media expert. I use all platforms, and again, everything that FindSpark has done to grow as a community has been very digital and social media focused. So we have used these tools in many different ways to, again, engage with our members, to get members to come out to our programs, to use our resources. So I'm happy to answer any sort of social media questions, any digital questions that you might have, even if it's not related to these two platforms. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Emily. That was awesome. I think we got Sarah on the phone this time instead of her computer mic, so I'm going to hand it back over to her to moderate this Q&A, or at least give it a shot. Sarah?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Emily. That was extremely insightful and full of a lot of really great content. So there was only one question throughout the actual webinar itself. Someone asked if they would be able to receive a copy of the presentation slides.
Oh yes, absolutely. I will share them. I will share the slides with Ryan so that you can email them out in whatever way is best. And also, yeah, I would definitely recommend everybody downloading the slides and going to them because I have actual videos of all of the stories that I mentioned, so you can actually watch them in action instead of only seeing those screenshots.
Great, thank you. I also see another question. How often should one be posting to their platform?
Great. So when it comes to Instagram stories and Snapchat stories, in terms of frequency, it really depends based on your resources. For FindSpark, what we do to be efficient is that we actually share the same story daily to both Instagram stories and Snapchat stories. So we don't create a different story for each, but we do take advantage of the fact that Instagram stories lets you tag other accounts and put in hashtags. So we'll usually start by posting it on Instagram stories, and if we're mentioning an employer or we're using a hashtag, we're able to do that there, versus when we upload it to Snapchat, we know that we can't do that same sort of tagging, so we'll tweak it a little bit. But we do a daily story that we send, basically the similar one to both platforms. We always do them during our live events, so our community knows and expects that if they can't make a live event, they can follow our stories to be able to get some of those behind-the-scenes tips and action items and access to our speakers. And again, on the days where it's not, there's not an event going on, we really take advantage of sharing content that we already have that we're sharing on other platforms. And we also use it to promote upcoming platforms. We use it to promote job openings. Like every Monday, we usually promote our most recent job openings from our job board and send people there. So we do a lot of different things, but we also try to have a theme every day so that we're not coming up from scratch each day with a new type of content. So like Mondays is our job, featuring jobs of that day, because that's also when we have our big newsletter that goes out every Monday. Tuesdays we're usually promoting an event. One day during the week we are actually maybe having an event, and so on and so forth. So I definitely recommend coming up with certain buckets. So maybe you're not doing it daily, but maybe you follow a similar theme where every Tuesday you do jobs, every Thursday you do whatever the next on-campus program is, or that sort of thing.
Fantastic. All right. Another question. How do you obtain permission first before doing a story or post with students in it? Do you do a waiver or something official?
Great question. So, in terms of permissions of taking photo and video of your students, that's something that, you'll have to address with your specific, sort of whatever department handles that sort of thing. I know with FindSpark, whenever we host events, we have people, when they sign up for the event, they sign a waiver when they sign up for the event. So anybody who registers for our events, they have to sign a waiver that says that they can be recorded, like in any way, shape, or form, basically photo, video, social. So that is how we get permission. I know some venues that will actually have a sign like on the entryway to the venue that says, upon entering this space, you are releasing, any rights for photo, video, that sort of thing. So definitely recommend checking, with whatever department is that handles that, whether it's just the boss of your career center or, public relations or that sort of thing. But that's how FindSpark specifically handles that. And I would say, if anybody else in the chat has experience with that, to definitely chat and share with all attendees, maybe see how you do it.
Our university has them sign a waiver with their application to the university. And
that's great.
And then with our employers at our job fair, we do it as part of our registration process. And so we do have quite a few federal employers who choose not to allow their identities to be posted, and then we have a second floor to our job fair, so everyone who's not comfortable being filmed is upstairs.
Oh, that's great. You even separate them physically. Yeah, that's super smart. And right, the same, even if you can't separate them physically, you can always ask employers upon sign up if they want to or not. And then, whoever's managing that social media can, sort of have a note with them of the people not to feature.
Right, yeah, and we do color-coded tags, name tags too.
Great.
So that our photographers can see at a glance. If it's a red dot, then they can't take a photo.
Awesome.
All right, does anyone else want to share their experience with that or have any other questions?
Hey, Sarah and Emily, we've got a few that were sent just directly to me, the host. A reminder to everybody to select the send to all panelists when you're sending in chats, but I'll read you a couple of them that are sent directly to me. The first one was, for the company takeover, do you go to the organization and hand them your phone or tablet, or do you just change the password for a day?
Great question. We just changed the password for the day. And in terms of Snapchat versus Instagram stories, for Snapchat, it is worth noting that you cannot have multiple people logged in at once. So once somebody logs in, if somebody else logs in, it will kick them out, which is really annoying. So if you're doing a takeover, I recommend creating a takeover guide. So that's something that FindSpark has. So we actually have different takeover guides for each sort of type of person. So we have a takeover guide for employers, for students, for sponsors, because it's a little bit different depending on who you are. But all of that includes things like, that we will be watching. And so when somebody's doing a takeover, we give them a lot of guidelines of here's examples of previous takeovers that are good, here's what to share, here's what not to share, here's ideas, here's a contact person in case you have questions. And then we will also follow along during the day so that if we notice anything like, oh, they haven't mentioned something yet, or we want to give them like real-time feedback, which we've done before. So for instance, we had a takeover once where the employer was really just doing videos with talking, and they weren't putting captions. And so we texted them, after we saw that a couple of times, and we said, hey, you should add captions so that people know what you're saying, even if they're not listening. So it's a great idea to do that as well, but we do just change the password that day. With Instagram, it's a little bit easier because multiple people can be signed into the same Instagram, so you don't have to worry about, if you want to log in for whatever reason, accidentally kicking your host out.
We have another question here. Could you just share some strategies for getting people to follow you in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so, really on both platforms, like you have to push it, right? You can't just be out there and hope. And so we, for instance, have been putting a lot of effort into our Instagram as of late. And so we do a lot of cross-promoting of our Instagram on other channels. So we'll post our Instagram into our Facebook group, onto our Twitter, onto our Facebook page. We'll also put it in email. So we have 3 weekly emails that go out, and 2 of them always have an Instagram post at the bottom that clicks out to that Instagram post. We do also in a lot of our emails kind of as a PS, say, PS, follow us, follow FindSpark on Instagram for career laughs and inspiration. We tell people what to expect. So for FindSpark, our strategy on our Instagram account has really been to be motivational. So you'll see a lot of our content is quote related, but then also funny. So we've started to create a lot of our own custom memes, which have been doing really, really well. So you have to really tell people to. And then we've even, when we have the luxury of being in person with people at one of our in-person events, or even during a webinar like this, like I'll do what I'll say right now. If everybody could just take 30 seconds right now to pick up their phone and search Instagram for FindSpark right now, if you wouldn't mind, just right now, I'll let you be rude, pick up your phone and just search for FindSpark and give us a follow. And if you really want to be awesome, turn on your post notifications for us as well. So that way you get a notification every time we post something new, so you will definitely not miss our fun inspiration and career lap. So if everyone could do that right now, that would be so awesome. We'd really appreciate it. So that's my little script for during webinars or events. And, you know, it's small but mighty, right? You have people who are super engaged, so it might not be a huge group, but you could get, you know, 10, 20 new people to follow you depending on the size of your event by just straight up asking them to do it when you're in person.
Awesome. I've got one more question that was sent privately to me, and then I think the rest have been sent to all panelists. So in addition to your advice for getting people to follow you on Instagram and Snapchat, are there other ways to increase followers for Twitter and Facebook and other social networks?
Sure. Well, on Twitter, and this is similar to Instagram, paying attention to keywords that people might be using if they are involved on your campus or interested in your company. So straight up doing an advanced search on Twitter or Instagram for hashtags for any sort of variation of your school or company name, and then following people, anybody who uses those keywords, those hashtags. One of the main ways on Twitter and Instagram to get people to follow you back is to follow them yourself. And so by searching those keywords, you know, assumedly if somebody's searching your school, posting and using your school's hashtag or using the school's name in some way, they probably will follow you if you follow them first. But you could also do the same sort of thing on Twitter. You can search people's actual bios. So you can search a keyword and then select people instead of tweets. And so you could search like Princeton if you work at Princeton, and anybody that has the word Princeton in their bio, you can easily follow them, and there's a good chance they'll follow you back. And then the other thing I would say on both Twitter and Instagram is to create what I like to call epic posts. And when I say epic posts, I mean create a post that first of all has a visual. So on Instagram, you're required to have a visual, of course, a photo, but on Twitter, you're not, but including an image. And when I say epic, I mean you tag and mention as many people as possible, as many accounts as possible in that post. So a really good example is if you're doing a career fair, you create these different epic posts where you're tagging the max amount of companies that you can in that post by tagging them in the photo. You can do up to 10 on Twitter. Twitter also now allows you to do 280 characters instead of 140. And so if the more mentioning you do in your posts or tagging in Instagram, the more likely those accounts will engage with your post, thus creating a ripple effect of their followers seeing that they engaged or them resharing it. So that's a big part of what we do at FindSpark events, because you know all of our events usually involve speakers from great companies. You know, Hustle Summit is a really fun epic recruitment event, so we're always creating a lot of posts that mention and tag a lot of those accounts, and that helps to get a lot of great engagement.
Awesome, thanks, Emily. Sarah, we got about 2 minutes left. Do you have anything else you want to get to?
There were a couple of questions on the chat. I'm just going to read them really quickly. They were a couple of people were asking if you would share your guides. Some people had questions about negative comments and spam, and others were asking about what other career centers use. Do they have their own personal devices, or do they buy something like an iPod Touch? I don't know if you want to address
So I'm just going to share my email up here again. If anyone has any follow-up questions or wants to see some of the things that I've mentioned, that's my email, super easy to remember. In terms of dealing with negative comments and spam, just delete them. It's pretty simple. Like as an admin of an account, you can easily delete comments. We do it all the time at FindSpark. It's not a big deal. Sometimes we choose to address them depending on if it's somebody actually addressing. I mean, social media is a great way to, you know, visibly address concerns that might be legitimate. So you can do that publicly, or if it's just offensive, of course, you can easily delete that as long as you're paying attention to notifications. And thoughts on Periscope, quick question. I don't really have thoughts on it. I don't think it's a huge major player. If you're going to invest in some sort of live video, I would recommend doing it on Instagram stories or Facebook Live because of the broader reach.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily. Just really quick, one more message from the Eastern ACE Professional Development Committee. We are having a winter meetup on January 8th at the College of New Jersey. So join us if you'd like to share, learn, and connect in a casual drive-in conference setting, from expert-led panels to an engaging and interactive group sessions. There's something for everyone at our winter meetup. You can register for that online on Eastern ACE's website.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And thank you all for your time today. Big thank you to Emily. Presentation was awesome. We will get the slides out to you within the next week or so. Don't forget to sign up for our other Regional ACE webinars. I think this is it for 2017, but we've got a few coming up in 2018. And don't forget to stop by and say hi to us if you're going to SOACE or MPACE over the next week. We'll be at both conferences. So thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, all.